What's up, YouTube? Uh, Hopefully this video isn't too long, but just wanted to go over some of my thoughts on Subarus in general and kind of like where the community's kind of gone, and I think it's kind of gone off the rails, just based off questions that I'm receiving from various people I don't know, friends, just in general. So the first thing is people are asking me, how can I make power safely, reliably? What do I need to do? How much power? How do I get to this power level? I want my car faster. First thing is just stop. Like, right. I want to tell you this right now. First, let's think of your goals, right? Your goals should be, did you buy a Subaru and think you were going to get like 600 horsepower out of this thing, right? Can you do that? Sure. Is it going to be reliable? I don't care what anyone tells you, it's not. Even if you build a motor, it's not going to be reliable. Forged internals aren't meant to last a long time. They're meant to handle power, but not for longevity. So just stop that. Go and buy a Hellcat. Like, if that's what you're looking for, is just straight line. I want to ball it on the highway and be able to beat G80s. Then you bought the wrong car. That's the biggest thing for me right now. Second thing, like, if you're going about it the wrong way, if you want to be fast anyway, right? So that's the American way, which is, I'm not saying that's wrong. A lot of people like it. I'm not, when I say the American way, that doesn't mean I'm not a patriot. Just throwing more horsepower at something to make it faster and adding weight is just not my cup of tea. It may be somebody else's, but it's not mine. I'm not trying to keep up with a Hellcat, right? I would love to be able to do that, but I'm not under the impression that, this thing would keep up with a Hellcat above 80 miles an hour. Like, that's just not. It's got more displacement. It's a powerful car. So just a way more powerful engine. Same with, newer German cars. You're not going to keep up with that shit. They send away for an email and they get 300 horsepower. Like, it's just not feasible. So what can you do? First, let's say you have the newer model STIs, WRXs. Obviously, they stop with the STI, so the newer WRX. First thing is sell it. I wouldn't they're just too heavy. They're just. I'm gonna obviously go on a tangent about power to weight, but they're just way too heavy. My car's too heavy. It's just too heavy for what you're trying to accomplish. If what you're trying to accomplish is just the feel, at least, of quick acceleration, better handling, better braking, just all around performance of a car. It should be known, adding horsepower only affects one aspect of your car, which is its acceleration. It does not affect your braking, your handling. Stripping, getting it lighter, affects all three: acceleration, braking, and handling. That should be your first thing. I see a lot of videos online and people are like just jumping out. Like, I'm putting a 2J with 800 horsepower into that can be your cup of tea. That's not mine. Like, that's great. Like, it's a new kind of thing to do. I understand that, but it's not going to be reliable. People who buy these cars, typically when you buy a Subaru, you buy it because you can't afford a G80, a Hellcat, but you want to go fast, right? Reliably. You can't. So that I just see it turns into a meme where, Subarus just get a bad rap because people are just destroying these fucking things. Again, I'm not saying everyone should go out and buy a GC8 coupe and strip it. Like, that's not what I'm implying. But I'm implying to have, to manage your expectations, right? To manage expectations with these Subarus, and know that 350 wheel horsepower on especially something with 2,800 pounds is more than enough. And even if you do a power to weight, just calculation on that, right? So what, 350 to the wheel, let's say it's 400 to the crank. It's roundabout, right? So 2,800 pounds, 400 horsepower. That's about 7 pounds per 1 horsepower. The Hellcat is about the same as that. But granted, again, it's not just about horsepower to pound. Once you get up in the above 80, your displacement is what's going to kill it, and they're just going to have way more power and they're going to kill me, right? But I'm not trying to keep up with Hellcats. If you take a Hellcat through the twisties and try to keep up with this thing, it's not even going to be close, right? Or just braking in anything else, in general. it's one of those things. If you want to make the STI or your WRX or any Subaru a one-trick pony where it just goes in a straight line, more power to you. I just don't. I feel like a lot of people just put like an IAG air oil separator on it, and then like now I can go to 900 horsepower. That's all I needed. It's an Econo box. It's literally like the cheapest entry point. It's not really cheap anymore, but it was just, and it's not cheap, and it's not cheap anymore. And they made it more quality. It's just more expensive because of inflation. It's still an Econo box that they threw a fucking turbo on. Like it's nothing crazy. I have this car. I do not at any point think that it's going to last me like years and years and years and years without regular routine maintenance and keeping it below or around 400 wheel horsepower tops. Like that's like tops. I don't even know if I'm going to go that high. Right now I'm at 350. Like that seems like way too much and I know that's crazy. Again, power to weight first. Your weight should be down first. So the newer STIs and WRXs, you're kind of fucked. Like those things are 3,500 pounds from the factory. Like again, I don't know why Subaru, it just, over the years, it's mind numbing that the power stayed the same from the GD line all the way up, maybe, 10, 15 horsepower jump in over 20 year span. But the fucking weight went up like 500 pounds. Like, I think the first GD, like the Bug Eye, I think it was around 3,000, like right around 3,000, maybe 31. I think and now they're, 35, 36. Like that's just like, it's just mind numbing. So you get a totally different car. Granted, there are some trade-offs to that, right? So my car is not going to be as rigid and as the newer WRXs and STIs, right? It's not going to be, there are ways around. Obviously, you can stiffen as much as you can, but in terms of like just the chassis, the bare bones, it's not going to be as rigid. I don't think the average or even most drivers are going to feel that difference, though. They're really, if you got into my car and then got into a newer STI with probably the same stuff done, I'd be very surprised if I didn't feel more nimble or just as nimble. Again, I can go over what I have, or you can go my previous videos, but it's basically just it's a version 8 STI, which is like the JDM version of a GD. So it's basically an 05 STI, just the 2-liter engine. So, but all the suspension, Brembos, everything. So then you get into like, and I don't want to like scare everyone off, because the money is the big thing. Like, how do I get this power? Where do I spend my money? Or how do I get, a fast car? And again, we talk about fast. If you just want straight line fast, by all means, dump everything you can into forged internals and just fucking send it to the moon. Like that, go ahead and do it. I don't think the vast majority of people that own Subarus can do that. The reason you buy a Subaru is because you want something fast and you want it rather cheap for the most part, especially used ones, right? If you're buying a new STI or new WRX, maybe not. I just think there are better probably cars in the same price range, if not cheaper, that you can get new or around, even used around the same time frame, that I don't think people are really buying them like thinking that, they're the best in their class. Because they haven't been let's be honest, they haven't been for quite a bit of time. So there's a few options, right? I hear people say first, like, I want to keep it safe and reliable because it's my daily, or I drive my family in it, right? Then you're doing it wrong. Like, you shouldn't be using your family car and then modifying that. Personal opinion, you want to do that, Subaru is not that car. Maybe a German vehicle or something older in Japanese, or not a Subaru. Don't pick a Subaru and think like, I can put a lot of money in this and then it's going to be reliable. You have to keep up with it, very much keep up with it. And also, I have no, like, I don't think this thing's going to last forever. I got a JDM motor with 60,000 miles on it, but it probably has well over 100. But I know how to treat them, so it's a little bit different. But I'm not expecting this to last forever, and I don't treat it as like my daily driver. Like that's not what it is. So what can you do then? If you have a newer one, what I would say, a newer one meaning past, like we'll say like the GR. The GR is like the 2012, 2008, I think, to like 2012, which is like the hatchback version of the. I think it's the only year that really had the hatchback, or the only model code that had the hatchback. If you're after that, then basically what I would do is buy something older. It for two reasons. It's probably more expensive because it's a newer model year. So you probably don't want to like waste money on something that could blow up if it's your family car or your daily driver, right? Don't do it. This is not. Don't do that. What you can either do that, or the second thing would be, and I said this before, take parts off, strip it. Like if it's a family car, obviously you can't remove AC if you live in a hot climate, but that'll save you a lot of poundage. Like this thing again, I took out the airbags. Like I have a removable steering wheel. I have no front airbag. Like I'm not concerned with that. Like that, but that again, this isn't a daily driver. You can't do that really on a daily driver or a family car. Like you're not going to be doing that. The trunk is stripped. There's nothing in the trunk, no spare tire. Can't really do that on a daily driver, right? Rear seats, maybe. Well, I mean, I'm saying that you can do it on a daily driver, but if you have a family or people who are riding in it, I strongly advise against it. Removing rear seats, removing as much as you can, getting the weight down, and a lightweight battery, like debatable, or moving the battery to the back to change the kind of the weight of the car to get it more of a 50-50. These are all things like if you take a car that weighs like 3,500 pounds and miraculously get it down to like 3,100 pounds, 400 pounds is a lot of weight, and you'll definitely feel that again, not just in a straight line, but how nimble it is, how it brakes, just, and of course acceleration. I mean, they say 100 pounds is worth about 10 horsepower. So imagine 400 pounds being 40 horsepower. So this thing right here, 350 horsepower. You're like, well, that's at the wheels. Maybe not that much. But then you compare it to the newer ones, right? So this is comparable to a newer, I don't know the model codes. I think it's VB or whatever it is. The newer, we'll say STI or WRX. They weigh 3,500. So 3,500 to 2,800 pounds, that's a 700 pound difference. 700 pounds. If it's 100 pounds or 10 pounds per every 100 pounds that you feel, that's what it kind of feels like, right? That's 70 horsepower. So this would be the equivalent of somebody with 420 horsepower to the wheels, right? A newer STI or a car that weighs about 3,500 pounds. That's what you're talking about. So if this has 400 horsepower, I mean, this is just stupid. Like 400 horsepower is a lot, but that's where I would kind of draw the line. 400 wheel horsepower, I think, is like especially if it's not a daily, you can kind of push that depending on the other supporting like longevity mods you've done and how regularly you keep up with maintenance, how much you get on it. That's kind of, it depends on the motor too. Obviously, like an EJ205, which is the 02 to 05 WRX, that one I would not push like very hard. It's an open deck, so even that the semi-closed deck is just has that little bit of help, maybe a little bit thicker on the cylinder walls, especially the EJ207, which is one I'm running here. Those I expect to handle a little bit more. The 2.5 liters, people say they can, people say they can't. The thing that the actual thing that kills on those are two things, and it kills all cars. The second thing does, but the first thing is, so the EJ207 that I have here in Japan, they got 2-liter STI engines, and here we were like, we Americans love our torque, so we got the 2.5 liter. They put out the same horsepower. They don't put out the same amount of torque, but they put them at the same amount of horsepower. This thing has that motor came with like 30 less foot-pounds of torque. So we got more torque with that extra half a liter of displacement here in the States. However, the block doesn't change in size. It's the same size. They just made the cylinder walls thinner. So you can imagine a thinner cylinder wall is not going to be as strong. And that goes without saying. It isn't. This is the EJ207. The reason I have this one, I've had it before. I've had it several times. It's depending on where you get it. And I can make a whole other video on JDM and Borders because it's a crapshoot. And they're getting very, very hard to come by now. They're a lot more stout. Some have forged internals from the factory. Some the V7s do, but the V8s, the version 8s and above, have the same kind of piston design as the USDM models, but again, the thicker cylinder wall. The second thing that I said, the reason the 2.5s, digressing just a smidge, the 2.5s have that thing that will, or something else that will hurt them, is torque. Torque kills shit. Torque hurts things, blows motors. Torque feels good, but that's why you see all these K20s, these Honda motors. The German stuff is a little bit different, but because they build their stuff different. You can't expect a Subaru to put out fucking 600 foot-pounds of torque and not just blow the fuck up. Like, that's just not it. You can have the power. I'll take the power. Like, horsepower is fine. I don't run, like, this thing isn't low on torque. It's like 350 wheel horsepower and like 315, 320 foot-pounds of torque. Most of the STIs you see in the same range will be the 2.5 liters, the USDM ones, will be higher torque than horsepower. And it kind of stays that way until you get to about 450 or so. And then the horsepower will kind of take over, right? Because you're feeling more of the boost at the high end. But the torque is what hurt. It's harder to control. It's picture Hellcat, right? They're not Hellcats, but picture Hellcat, right? Like, they have a lot of power right away, and you can feel it, and you see them like run into shit right away as well. It's harder to control, and it breaks stuff. This isn't an LS motor. This isn't a Dodge Hellcat motor. Like, this thing isn't made for a lot of horsepower, or torque. It isn't made for that. It just isn't. That wasn't their design. This isn't a 2J or a K20 where they designed. Well, K20 isn't making a lot of torque, but a 2J to where it's an iron block to where it can just take that shit, right? It's not going to do that. So again, in summation, for if you have a newer one, lighten it or buy something that is lighter and then play with it, right? That's the first thing. This was $400, by the way. This was $400. It looked like shit when I got it. It was a 95 coupe. I mean, it's still a 95 coupe. I've put about $19,000 into it. So we're looking at $19,400, and it's got 350 wheel horsepower, and it's pretty. It's hard to beat that. Like, not the horsepower. Anyone can make, probably, well, not anyone, but you can probably make horsepower or 350 wheel horsepower for less than $19,000, starting with no car. You can probably do that. But it won't be all-wheel drive. It won't have Brembos. Most likely. Again, you could do it. I'm just saying you can do it. And it won't have, supposedly 60,000 miles, on the odometer with a 6-speed transmission and, a locking center differential. Just all the bells and whistles. Because it's one thing to have a car that has 350 wheel horsepower. It's another one that, is an excellent track car and can keep up in the twisties rather well, right? So that's the first thing. Sell it or buy something lighter. That's the first thing. If you have a GD or something like that, regular maintenance is the best thing. And then lighten it would be my first thing. I would say lightening it, you'll feel a lot just by taking weight out of the car. I like study this thing and try to take weight out wherever I can. I see the front mount isn't helping, but I try to take weight out, little weight here or there, wherever I can, with thinking still that, I do drive it and I want to keep some of the creature comforts in there. Again, don't have AC, don't have airbags, don't have any spare tire in the back. That doesn't affect me at all. I live in Washington. None of what I just said affects me on a daily basis. So that's not a big deal. It will affect others. The other thing is, manage your expectations as far as how much you're putting into a car. See, the meme is I put $20,000 into my Subaru and a barrel I made 350 wheel. That's because you got to spend so much money on stuff just to keep it alive. Like, it's not meant, like, most motors, with the exception of some crazy ones, right? Like the newer German stuff, Hondas, the K20 is a good example. Older Toyota stuff, the 2J, the 1J, like all those Toyota iron blocks are gonna, those things can handle like well over triple, quadruple what they're rated for at the factory, right? They're gonna be able to handle that. A Subaru, if you just throw quadruple if you throw 1,200 horsepower at an STI block, any block, I don't care what you have done to it, it's not gonna last long. You throw double at it, it's not gonna. It's granted, we're talking 300 to 600 horsepower jump, or even with the older ones, or the newer ones that only make 275 or 250 or whatever. You go to 500 or 550, like, don't expect super long life out of these things. I just wouldn't expect that. You're putting lots of strain on everything that wasn't meant. Even if you replace everything, then again you run into it's forged. It's meant for big power, but it's not meant to last. So don't expect to have a Subaru make 500 horsepower, over 400 wheel horsepower, and for it to last a long time. Don't expect that. Again, if you want something like that, then do some custom crap where you're putting a 2J in and just making it a fucking drag queen, because the weight will be destroyed if you put a 2J in this fucking thing. It's so heavy and it's just terrible. If you want a straight line car, if you want a straight line fast car, you bought the wrong car. You bought the wrong one, and I'm sorry. It's going to be great. Straight line in the snow, sure, you'll probably beat a lot of them. You'll probably beat a lot. So yeah, if you want straight line in the snow, you bought the right car. If you want something, if you keep up regular maintenance, is safe and reliable and a fun car all around to drive, then yeah. I have a buddy who has a GF, which is this year, but this is the wagon of this. And I had the wagon before that. He beats the piss out of his car, and it has all of 120 horsepower. He drives it way more aggressively than I drive this thing, and it's just going. He treats that thing, in terms of maintenance, he's on everything, right? Just OEM parts. It's expensive, but he buys the right parts, keeps up with everything, and can dog the piss out of it because he's keeping it at a lower horsepower level. It just takes it. It's got like 220,000 miles, and I have yet to drive with him and him shift below 6K. Like it just dog the piss out of it for 3-4 years. It doesn't matter. Because again, you're keeping it low. Could I do that with mine? Fuck no. Like I can't. I'm not expecting a 350 wheel horsepower car that came with around, it's 400 at the crank. So 300 at the crank to 400 at the crank. I'm not expecting me to just be able to keep it at 7K RPMs over and over and over again from stoplight to stoplight. That's not gonna fly. Can I do a pull here or there? Can I take it to the track? Can I take it to autocross? Absolutely, yeah. But I'm not expecting it to just take a beating for days of abuse, if you will, over the course, of a week. So that's the other thing. So think about power to weight. That's the biggest thing. I know this video is going to probably piss people off, but think about power to weight. I just see so many people just adding more and more and more and more power. That is not what you need. I know that you've seen online somewhere that somebody said that you can put a fucking jet engine on this thing, and you don't need more power. You need to either lighten the vehicle, which again affects 3 things as opposed to affecting 1 thing, or B, you need a new car. You should have got a Hellcat or steal one like everybody else. I just, it's really frustrating. This video drug on, but it's really frustrating just to hear just people just, what do I do to get to this horsepower level? And people giving them like how you get to this horsepower level, how you do, stop it. Like that should be the last thing that you want. Because basically what you're doing is you're giving these people, just the ingredients to just blow up a Subaru engine. And then you get to the point where once you blow it up, there's 2 kinds of people, right? The people who just give up and it turns into a meme for them, right? They just gave up and now I hate Subarus and fuck them. Or 2, the person who just, the thing I did wrong last time was not that I had too much power. I need to add more to it. That was the problem, which is completely the wrong answer. So, with that said, I have, and I'll end it on this. I've had probably 12 Subarus. This is probably about my 12th. 3rd JDM motor. The only motor that I've blown and when I say blown, I mean it was still running. Compression was stupid low. Like compression was like 20 PSI on 1 cylinder. And every other one that I had was like, when I sold it or got rid of it, like sold it in good conscience, was a very healthy motor. leak down in compression was great. The only one that I've had a problem with was, and you can see in my previous videos if you want to look at it, I had a wagon, a GF wagon, before I swapped it to a WRX and then eventually an STI, which became this. I just threw a turbo on a fucking NA motor. Just threw a turbo on it, which I've done before. It's quick and easy to do. I was like, I just want more power. The car cost me $1,000 though, so I didn't give a shit. And I was looking for kind of an excuse to swap, to get back into swapping, because it's been a while since I did it. So I ran it about 7 PSI. It was a TD04, which is a WRX turbo. Just threw it on an EJ22. You want to do that? Do that. That will last, not forever, and it won't. If my buddy was driving it, it wouldn't last very long. But it will last a good bit of time on 7 PSI. What I did was I turned it up to 14 PSI. I literally fucking doubled it. And just, I ran like that for a good bit. Granted, I'm not, redlining it from stoplight to stoplight. Just, I probably got about a good, we'll round up, say 100 pulls out of it before, compression was, it was just detonating, right? Because I was stupid about it for a couple reasons. You shouldn't, 7 was fine. I shouldn't have gone off the deep end. 7 PSI was fine. And 2, it was probably double, not double, probably I would say at least 60 to 70% more power than what it came with from the factory, right? And the motor already had 200,000 miles on it, and I threw a turbo on it. Again, I was not planning for that to last long. I was trying to blow it up pretty much. And it did. I just feel like, again, even with the newer engine, that's the thing with the newer, you're buying a newer car and you're putting a lot of stuff in it and you're expecting it to last long. That's just crazy to me. That's just crazy. Buy something cheap. I don't have a garage, or I don't have, then you shouldn't, then that sucks. Again, you don't just want to, I have no other option, so I'm just going to modify my 3,500 pound car that's my daily driver and family car. That's a terrible idea. Just a terrible idea. Okay, I'll end that.